the late 1700s, Spain was deteriorating from within. The once formidable Spanish Empire had transformed into a weakened relic drained by incessant wars, corrupt officials, and declining monarchs. The Bourbon dynasty, imported from France, was already struggling amidst this decline. It was during this period that a boy was born who would exacerbate the situation. He was a pervert, a sadist, and a master manipulator. He would betray his father, seduce the church, ruin for queens, and leave Spain drenched in blood and humiliation. This boy was Ferdinand VII of Spain, a figure historians refer to as El Rey, the Felon King. He was not merely a tyrant. By the time the horrors began, Spain was already in decline. Charles IV, Ferdinand's father, was perceived as weak and indecisive, while his queen, Maria Luisa, was rumored to be involved in an affair with the true power behind the throne, Prime Minister Manuel Godoy. There were whispers that Ferdinand might not even be Charles's son. Raised in this environment of scandal and suspicion, what emerged was not a hero, but a monster in the making. Ferdinand was never satisfied with being in a subordinate position as crown prince. He conspired behind his father's back, colluding with nobles who loathed Godoy and the queen. He exchanged clandestine letters with Napoleon Bonaparte, seeking French support to usurp his own father. In 1808, the Mutiny of Arques erupted. Spanish citizens, incited with rage, stormed the palace. Charles IV abdicated under duress, and Ferdinand ascended to the throne. He was summoned to France and imprisoned for 6 years in a lavish jail. Cut off from his people, Ferdinand began to deteriorate, but this decline was short-lived. He reportedly harassed female servants, demanded explicit reading materials, and took pleasure in hearing tales of torture and sexual punishment. Even Napoleon's guards found him unsettling. Liberal thinkers, poets, and educators faced execution or exile, while the secret police relentlessly pursued anyone who had once aspired for progress. Priests were urged to spy on their confessors and report any impure thoughts to the crown. Napoleon had no intention of relinquishing control over Spain. He penned hundreds of pages fantasizing about revenge, domination, and absolute control. Yet, upon his return in 1814, he was welcomed as a savior, unaware of the monster he had become. Ferdinand's return to power was far from glorious. Within weeks, he abolished Spain's constitution, reinstated absolute monarchy, and initiated a series of political purges. Some victims were as young as 13. However, this was not merely a
quest for power. For Ferdinand, repression was a form of eroticism. Torture chambers beneath royal palaces were reopened, and female prisoners endured invasive inspections by selected guards behind closed doors. Ferdinand established a court where cruelty and lust intertwined. His obsessions included twisted voyeurism, domination, and humiliation. He secretly observed noble women paying servants to deliver their letters and undergarments. He even had entire families exiled unless their daughters consented to visit him. This is where the darkness intensifies. Foreign diplomats reported that Ferdinand maintained clandestine pleasure rooms within Madrid's royal palaces. It was said that he could not perform unless his partners wept. One French observer noted, "His Majesty possesses the appetites of a demon and the soul of a butcher." Royal archives reveal that he misappropriated state funds to construct hidden brothels staffed with peasant girls taken from orphanages. The court turned a blind eye, for he was king. Ferdinand married 4 times, and none of his wives emerged unscathed. His first wife, Maria Antonia, died under mysterious circumstances at the age of 21. Some speculated that she was poisoned by Ferdinand or his mother. His second wife, Maria Isabel, endured multiple miscarriages, and Ferdinand labeled her as cursed. When she pleaded for medical assistance, he allegedly confined her to her room, claiming she was hysterical. His third wife, Maria Joseph, was so delicate that she was rarely seen in public. She died childless and in fear. His fourth and final wife, Maria Cristina, suffered the most. Their political adversaries and innocent women were summoned for interrogation. Witnesses reported that screams reverberated through the stone walls, particularly at night. Behind closed doors, she was subjected to humiliating rituals and forced displays of affection, even as Ferdinand engaged with prostitutes and nuns. Ferdinand was not satisfied with mere whispers and shadows, transformed punishment into performance. He claimed to observe through concealed peepholes, laughing as captives pleaded for mercy. He commanded the creation of private dungeons beneath the palatial estate, where extravagant orgies took place, some even in chapels. Blackmail was widespread, with confessions to priests leveraged for sexual dominance. It was rumored that he compensated torturers to provide him with detailed accounts of their techniques. It was not justice, but rather pleasure. Secret baptisms occurred behind palace walls, and Cordius spoke of switched infants, bribes to midwives, and nocturnal burials. Another account suggested that she was given communion wine infused with narcotics. The situation deteriorated further as Ferdinand surrounded himself with a court of vice, a carefully selected group of clergy, nobles, and guards who indulged in his proclivities. Physicians described him as being covered in sores, with a blackened tongue and decaying teeth, suffering from violent hallucinations and seizures. The king amassed everything: love letters, compromising sketches, and whispered secrets, constructing a personal archive of disgrace. His courtiers lamented for tradition, yet not for the man himself. Speculation abounded. Was he impotent? Did he suffer from syphilis? Was his blood too tainted by inbreeding? Historians dreaded repercussions from the church and the crown as police files and foreign reports circulated. It was reported that Ferdinand, under the guise of policy, compelled a servant to kneel before a statue of the Virgin Mary as he sought to cleanse her soul. Despite his numerous indulgences, Ferdinand's inability to produce heirs was evident. He fathered only 2 children, one of whom tragically passed away in infancy. In a desperate attempt to fabricate a pregnancy, he allegedly adopted a peasant's baby. This left him without a legitimate heir and set the stage for impending civil war. Ferdinand's actions were as reprehensible as his rule. By 1833 he had become obese, bedridden, and decaying from within. Upon his death, the stench of his body was so overwhelming that the embalmers reportedly retched. Some citizens celebrated in the streets, relieved that the monster was no more, yet his legacy continued to fester. Spain endeavored to erase his memory. Textbooks depicted Ferdinand as a flawed yet patriotic figure, while his sexual offenses were concealed and his victims silenced. Royal documents mysteriously disappeared, and only now, centuries later, are the fragments of truth beginning to surface. Letters and diaries raise the question: was Ferdinand III truly the most depraved king in history?